I know, I was thinking of that today.
Yeah, it'd be great. Okay, so welcome, friends. We are, let's see, it's May 13th, and we are here to talk about our essential oil apothecary class featuring basil. So Molly and I and Gail are here, and I just am so excited because this oil that I have right here from doTERRA, basil, I've been smelling it, I've been using it, I've been studying it and doing some research as I get the information to share for the class. It's really amazing how much I feel like I've taken basil for granted, you know? I've grown up with basil. My family is Italian on both sides, so we always have fresh basil. We've grown it in our gardens, used it in our Italian foods, and but as I started to do research on it, it's really interesting. So, first of all, I just wanted to talk about the energetics of the oil here. And it's really interesting because basil is known as the oil of renewal. So, it's also a really great oil that has so many more medicinal remedies than just using it as a culinary herb. So when we're talking about the main medicinal properties of this essential oil, it's antibacterial, anti-infectious, antispasmodic, carminative, and it's a nervine. So the main chemical constituents in it is actually linalool, which I found so interesting because linalool is the common constituent found in lavender, which is known to have that relaxing effect on the body, mind, and spirit. And within this, it also contains 1.8 I'm not sure how I pronounce it, cineol, which is found in eucalyptus. And it also contains a chemical component found in bergamot, and it has menthol chavicol in it. So traditionally, this essential oil, excuse me, there's so much pollen in the air right now. It's crazy, and it's been really dry. So excuse me. But traditionally, this oil has been used for simple things like bee stings, bronchitis, dizziness, frozen shoulder, gout, greasy hair, infertility, lactation to increase milk supply, which Molly was going to talk about a little bit later, and for loss of the sense of smell. I don't know if you've ever met anyone who's lost their sense of smell. I've actually known two people that this has happened to, and one of them was a friend of mine. I used to sell real estate when I lived in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and it was my office mate that I used to share my office with. And he was doing neti pot, and that's taking a pinch of sea salt traditionally, and mixing that with warm water until it dissolves to make like a saline water, where you have a neti pot, which looks like a little genie pot, and you put it in one nostril, and ideally, as it cleans out the nasal cavity, the water would stream out the opposite nasal cavity, and then you do the opposite nostril, and then you do lean to the other side so that you just switch. And what that does is it cleans out the senses. So it just reminds me that I need to do that, since there's so much pollen from the trees right now. Things are in bloom. So it's really dusty right here also, because I'm living in the high desert, and it hasn't rained so much. Hopefully the rains are coming this week rained a little bit yesterday, so that was good. But the ground has been very dry and dusty. And as we move around and play outside, that just gets all up in your nose and blocks your nasal cavity and can really cause a lot of issues with breathing. So the quality where we were talking about the menthol and that C1, that 1.8 cineol is a chemical constituent that's found in bergamot and in eucalyptus, which are also known to, eucalyptus opens up the respiratory, and bergamot actually helps us to elevate our mood. So when we smell this, it's a good one to add to any of your diffuser blends. So let me see my notes here, because I can tell you just a couple suggestions of what it blends well with. And let's see if you like, where is it?
I'm loving the birds in the background.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah, it's like
they're making their homes, they're building their nests over here, and they are just so cute. They're getting ready to have their little babies if they haven't already.
they sound busy.
Yeah, they are busy over here. So it blends really nice with any wood oil, like cedar wood, also bergamot, peppermint. Um, let's see. This is a great way when we diffuse it to really help us affect the mind, because as we know, the nose is a direct line to the limbic system, which is where it passes through the nasal cavity and the olfactory glands, and as it moves into the limbic system, our scent recognition is associated with memories. So diffusing it is a really great way to repattern the brain. So a lot of times when we have negative emotions and we feel anxious or overwhelmed or just drained and exhausted, or we have negative habits that we want to change, this is a good oil to repattern the brain and really create that pattern of renewal. So also, basil helps to alleviate or help to support the adrenal glands. So when we're feeling chronic fatigue or any kind of exhaustion for extended periods of time, a lot of times that means that we have overtaxed our adrenal glands. So you can mix it, blend it with a carrier oil and massage your adrenal glands in the mid-back area, and that can really help the adrenal glands as well as elevate the main moods that are improved with basil, which includes fatigue and low energy, being overwhelmed, like I was just saying. Or a negative or an inability to cope with today's stressors. And as we know, we're dealing with a lot of stuff. Things are changing. People are having a hard time making plans and, you know, planning for the future. When are things going to reopen again? So the more that we can learn to be like the quality of water and go with the flow, the easier time we're going to have adjusting to all the changes, so that even when we feel like the carpet has been ripped out from underneath us, we can still feel a sense of grounding no matter what. So basil is a really nice oil that supports us and people who are under a lot of mental strain. It brings rejuvenation of our vital forces after long periods of burnout, aka adrenal fatigue or exhaustion. And basil oil may also restore our body's natural rhythms of sleep, activity, and rest. So if we're going to correlate those things that we do in life and our actions in life, it correlates to the yogic philosophy, the gunas, which are the 3 states of being, right? So we have rajas, which is a state of activity. So for example, when we wake up in the morning, we want to have some excess rajasic energy so that we can get up and go and we're not feeling lethargic. And then get our stuff done throughout the day. We take care of business, right? We take care of ourselves. And then we want to move into a state of rest, right? So we want to be able to begin to unwind from all of that activity naturally and just begin to slow down. And then that way, when we're able to slow down and relax our nervous system and our minds naturally with aromatherapy, yoga, meditation, the foods that we eat, and the way that we set up our daily life, we can really set ourselves up for really great patterns of sleep, which is so amazing. So, and you could compare that to, you know, the rajasic energy, rajasic energy, like I talked about. The rest, moving more into the tamas or the sattvic energy, that just state of pure relaxation, you know, and then that action of sleep, which is inactivity, which represents tamasic energy. And I like to think of it as like an infinity sign. So if we had Rajas and Tamas at either end of the infinity sign with sattvic energy in the middle, it's just a flow, right? It's a constant flow, and it moves with the natural cycles of our day. And if we're living in accordance to our nature and in balance, then we don't have any hard time harmonizing with those rhythms. So if we do, we can use basil oil to assist us in that. And then this oil is also helpful in the recovery of negative habits. So it gives us hope and optimism to the tired soul. Like sometimes we just try to change our habits and we feel like it's Sisyphus trying to roll a snowball up a tropical hill, you know. It's just not going to happen. We feel like we're trying and trying and trying. So this oil supports that. It may also assist us in giving up false stimulants, which in our culture we use so much. Look at all those energy drinks, the little shots that they sell at gas stations, the drinks that they have that have so many different chemical, synthetic ingredients that are really like flooding our adrenal system with all this falsified energy. And then it's like whoosh, spiking up, and we're feeling like, yeah, we're at the top of our game. We can do anything. We can climb a mountain in 10 minutes. And then, you know, we reach that peak. And then what happens? We totally crash. So this is this is not optimal treatment for our adrenal system and for our adrenal glands. So we can also apply 1 or 2 drops directly to the soles of our feet too. If someone doesn't like the smell, for instance, of basil, I don't know how I could because it's a yummy oil, but you know, everybody's different. We all resonate with oils, and sometimes those oils that we need for our system, for healing, we resist. So the more that we, you know, use oils medicinally and not think about, oh, do I like the smell of this or not? But we think about sometimes medicine, you know, we don't really like the taste of it, but it's good for us, so we take it. We try it and we experiment for ourselves and see how that works. So with mental fatigue, when the mind is tired, you can also just add a drop to your hands and then just cup your hands around your nose and your mouth and smell that. And, you know, you, instead of reaching for midday caffeine, maybe try that. And you could even mix it with a little bit of peppermint or eucalyptus, and that's very invigorating. And if you're overheating, it's cooling. And sometimes if we're feeling overheated, the body wants to shut down as well because it just gets tired and we just want to lay down. Whereas if we start to cool it down a little bit, that begins to invigorate us and begins to activate the mind a little bit and energize us. So we begin to see how, you know, we can really work with plants to just help support us throughout our day. Another thing that basil is really good for is earaches. So you can either massage around the ear, especially on the ear, on the bone right here of the skull, right around the jawline and all around the ear. You can even massage the ear itself. But remember that we never want to put essential oils in our ear. We can put carrier oils in our ear, but never essential oils. It's just too potent and strong, and our ear and all of the organs within the ear are very delicate, and you don't want to damage your ear. So always around the outside, and it's nice to dilute it with a carrier oil. Again, that way it moves into the area over an extended period of time, and it will, it's like making the medicine last longer. And for people who experience a lot of muscle spasms, I notice sometimes if I'm working a lot on the computer, I'll notice that my eye will begin to twitch. Or if people have an overtaxed nervous system, the nervous system begins to feel a little bit fried and frazzled, right? And when that happens, it can express itself in the twitching of the muscles, or the muscles will begin to spasm or even cramp. So this is a really good oil to use topically and give yourself a massage with the Self Abhyanga, which is a nice warm oil massage. And you can just massage that into areas of the muscles that are really feeling like too tight, and then they're like, they begin to quiver. Let's see. I wanted to give you, move into the recipes and more practical things. So if you wanted to take notes, you can take notes, or you can rewind the video. But Molly, do you want to share a couple things about basil that we were talking about earlier today?
Yeah, for sure. So first of all, basil is one of the oils that is talked about and recommended for increasing your breast milk supply postpartum. Basil, along with clary sage, geranium, and fennel, can all be used when you are feeling like you would like to increase your milk supply. And just some ways that you can do so is you will dilute with a carrier oil, and you'll apply to your breast, but maybe just towards the lymph. And it is common sense, but just avoid the direct nipple. But along the side, along your lymph. And another technique too is you can apply to your spine in that same area of your chest, of your breast. So essentially right between your shoulder blades. I mean, I don't know how easy that is if you really try to do it, but in that general area. So maybe even on the sides of your ribs, on the back, and then underneath, along the sides. And a regular breast massage is always great too. So just adding that in, but to the side, and obviously giving yourself enough time between feedings with baby that you won't have to worry about the baby coming into contact, just because of more so the taste, and the smell could be a little off-putting for them too. So maybe after,
Good point.
When you know that you won't be feeding again for 2 hours, that would be a nice time to apply. So that regarding the increase of the breast supply, which the breast milk supply, which I find just totally amazing and awesome. And what mama doesn't want more tools, and especially being able to really utilize plant medicine in that way, and that's so beautiful. And it's an oil that can be in the house anyways for so many different reasons, like Karuna had already mentioned. So it's really just, it's not, you can think it's a multi-use you know, product, right? Like so many people and so many mamas want to, you know, incorporate into the home. So it's not an additional, you know, product you have to have in the home that's only purpose is, you know, solely for that. You can really use it in so many different ways. And also I looked into, because kind of like Karuna was saying at the beginning, how you were kind of mentioning not taking advantage of basil as much. And now this is why I love this Wednesday class, this Wednesday talk, I feel like it is, you know,
Yeah.
because it's like just going through all the different oils that we have, but we might not use, you know, or think to use on an everyday basis because they're just not more of the so-called popular ones. So it's nice to really discover different oils that you like normally wouldn't incorporate it in that way. And especially basil, you know, just stereotype it being really great for different culinary recipes. So I was doing some more research and I found a lot that you had already mentioned, and then some different things related to the spiritual aspects of the oil too, which we're all into. And I was reading about using basil essential oil to remember your spiritual abundance. So really to remember how connected we are and how abundant we are spiritually, and to awaken our connection with our guides, our ancestors, and our angels. And regarding basil, we speak of 3 specific archangels: Michael, Metatron, and Sabrael. And Archangel Michael, the angel of protection and remover of fears, and Metatron, which is Archangel of enlightenment and the activation of our ascension process and Akashic records and that access and that connection. And Sabrael is our archangel that helps us to release jealousy, negative forces, and viruses. Hello. So sitting with that oil and a couple drops in your palm and taking some deep inhalations and really, you know, asking for the clarity to connect with our, you know, our spiritual abundance. So I really, really love that about the oil too. Yeah, and that's what really stuck out to me the most, is really connecting with our angels using this oil, which I feel like, especially right now, there's so much confusion, and it's just beautiful to remember how spiritually abundant we are.
And also that it helps address mental clarity, you know, it finds that clarity. And I love that what you were talking about there, because some traditional uses of basil, for example, like it's been known as the king of herbs. In India, it's known as tulsi, holy basil. So almost in every home in India, they have a tulsi plant that is almost at the central point of their house. And it's been, you know, you can use it medicinally for the teas, the leaves, you know, and it also has been used traditionally in Egypt to embalm people. And also it's used as, it was known as the herb of protection. And it helped people to transition from life to death. And so it was traditionally used also in Crete and in Greece for funeral purposes, for protection of the soul that's moving on. So, you know, it's so amazing how just one oil and one plant, you know, I mean, it comes from the leaves of the plant. So when we're talking about the essential oil, it's an herb. So it's coming from the leaves of the plant, but it's also got a warm spiciness to it, even though it's so subtle. But on, you know, if we're talking according to Ayurveda, it's got that that sweetness to it as well. And that sweetness, what does that do? It calms the intensity, right? That
Mm-hmm.
intense feeling. So, you know, and also I love to bring it into not only the esoteric, the energetic, the scientific, but let's bring it into the practical. Like, what can we actually do? So I like to make DIY things all the time. So, you know, we're coming into the season where people are outside all the time, right? I mean, I'm sitting outside right now. I'm just like, yay, the sun, the spring is here. I'm so thrilled. And the wind died down a little bit because there's still, you know, we're getting that wind from the mountains and it's got that crispness to it. So, just being in the sun feels so good. And we can make a homemade um, insect repellent, you know, and we can also begin to balance our pH with that too. And when we balance our pH, we can just use something as simple as apple cider vinegar. And we can mix some basil in there and some other ingredients and create a natural insect repellent. We can also, as I don't know if you remember hearing about one of the benefits of basil is if you have a tendency to be kapha dominant according to your Ayurvedic constitution, then you are blessed with long, thick, luxurious hair. However, one of the downsides of that may be that it may be very greasy all the time. Like you may have just naturally greasy hair because kapha dosha people have excess oils in them, which is a great thing because vatas are so dry. We're like lizards. We only wish we had those oils. But you can add this, you know, a couple drops of basil, and rosemary is also really good for your hair, along with many others, but those are just some of the major ones. And you can really begin to, because it works almost like as an astringent. So it will kind of alleviate that real greasy, heavy feeling of your hair, which is really nice. And then think about your skin. So you could do little test patches on your skin when you dilute the oils, and maybe if you have really oily skin, you can put some of basil oil in your moisturizer or your face lotion, and that may seem counterintuitive, or just a face oil, and it may seem counterintuitive to put more oil on oily skin, but sometimes I've had estheticians tell me that when you live in a very dry climate, um, the body is really striving to produce those oils, but maybe limited to or prevented to. So when you put the oil on your skin, or I mean, when it's dry, it will produce oils to protect the skin. So if you have excess oily skin, we can also use a face oil, depending on, you know, ideally for skin. The carrier oil that has the closest cellular structure to our skin is jojoba oil. So you could use jojoba oil with a drop of basil and just begin to move that into the face. And then you may discover that instead of making your face more oily, it actually begins to draw out the oil so it's not so oily. So that's something really cool about that as well. And then we can also, you know, use this oil for antibacterial ways. So because it's known to fight bacteria and infections, it's also, basil is also known to reduce disease-causing inflammation in the body. It's also been known to fight viruses as well as relieve congestion in the lungs. So when we're talking about current situations and the symptoms of you know what that's going on, then basil oil is actually a really great oil to clear the lungs, to help protect us and support the immune system. And also it fights free radical damage and stimulates the nervous system as well as the adrenal cortex. So while these oils are beneficial for flavoring our foods, they're also very potent compounds that have such high antioxidants in them and other beneficial photochemicals, which is amazing. So some of the other things that, let me see, we can also put basil in our deodorant. So if we're talking about being antibacterial, we don't want bacteria to grow in warm, moist spots in our body, which is one of the reasons why we put on deodorant, and so that we don't emit a body odor. So it's a really nice one to keep us fresh, you know. And by making our own deodorant too, we're also avoiding any of the metals that they're putting that are found sometimes in deodorant, which end up blocking the lymph nodes, which Molly was talking about. So if you're using deodorants that are synthetic, that have metals in them like aluminum, those are lymph inhibitors, and that could be one of the reasons that maybe women aren't producing enough breast milk, and why the basil oil works so well to clear the lymph and to stimulate milk production. So it's so fascinating how everything is so intricately connected. And then we can also make you know, a laundry soap and add basil to it as well, because it really freshens up our clothes and has that purifying action. So if I'm happy to post some recipes when I post the link. And if anyone has any questions, then please either write them down or contact the person who shared this video with you. Or Gail, do you have any questions about, or comments or any additions? Because I know that you make lots of remedies. And what can you tell us about basil? Please share if you would like.
I love basil. I mix it with lemongrass in a room refresher spray for the bathroom. And one day I was like, I don't know why I was hanging out in the bathroom, but I was. So I tried to use it to clean the mirror.
I call it my office.
Yeah. So I cleaned the mirror with my spray, and it did a fantastic job. So then I started to shine the faucet, and then I realized, oh, I can spray the handle of the doorknob, and I was just using it as like a total bathroom cleaner. I didn't use it to clean the shower, didn't think it would be effective, but it shines things really great. And the smell, so, you know, when you use air fresheners, they just kind of coat the bad smell. But with the lemongrass and the basil, it actually neutralizes scents. So that's why it's really great for the bathroom. And I just love it. I love it, love it. So I use always half and half lemongrass and basil, and sometimes I put them in my diffuser because it's really a clean, uplifting scent. And so I put a little bit of alcohol and distilled water in the spray and try it out for all kinds of things.
Oh, I love that. I love to hear how people use the oils. That's so amazing. Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
Gail, what do you use as the base for the spray?
Good question.
I use about a third grain alcohol.
Yeah.
And the rest distilled water.
Ah, nice.
Mm-hmm. Mhm.
and that's
Yeah.
it. And but I also have another cleaner that I use with I use white vinegar. So I'm thinking about the possibility of adding white vinegar to this cleaner to make it even, or this room spray. But the thing is, vinegar in the room spray takes away from the lovely scent of the lemongrass and the basil.
A lot of times, though, if you're using white vinegar in your DIY cleaner, you can even add as little as, like, I think you might have to check how big your bottle is, but half a teaspoon, or even a tablespoon. Not that much, you know. Another thing you could consider adding would be witch hazel, apple cider vinegar, you know. That's kind of strong. That's got a strong smell too, but just a little bit of the vinegar, you know. And the distilled water is really great because, as opposed to adding regular water, it kind of preserves your spray so it doesn't get funky or start to grow anything in it. Because if you were to keep it for a long time and you just put water in there, you'll grow some funk in there. Possibly. Okay, so I think, let's see, final thoughts. Oh, this is another reason why. Like, why do we think that people use basil as an herb in food? Any thoughts?
Because it tastes good.
Yeah.
It tastes good. It sure does. Pesto is one of my faves. But it's also a digestive aid.
Oh.
And, you know, I like to think about that because I love Indian food, and Indians are really into spices. And of course, their spices also are medicinal when we think about Ayurveda. And it's just so amazing when we really, like I said, when we really start to pay attention about things and then begin to question, like, why does this recipe contain this ingredient, you know? But on that note, speaking of recipes, I am going to share a recipe for basil lemonade.
Ooh.
Yeah. So now's the time. People are starting to grow herbs. We're starting to grow herbs in our garden. Julie and I have been getting the garden ready. It's been amazing. And basil is something she grows all over. She grows the tulsi, the holy basil. So you can take your fresh herb and your oil, because it's always nice to have, I think, a visual of the essential oil that you're using in your recipe, and have the herb with the oil or the fruit, you know, depending on if you can. Like, for example, this is a lemonade, so obviously we want to use fresh lemons. So we would take 4 to 5 fresh squeezed lemons, and you can just squeeze them the old-fashioned way, or you can juice them. And if you have a juicer, oftentimes I'll just cut them up so that they fit in the spout, but I'll put the whole lemon in there, the rind and all, because the rind is the part that has the essential oil in it, you know. So you can juice fresh lemons, and it's going to be really strong. So depending on how you want your lemonade, you can add, if you want it bubbly, you can add some mineral water. If you want it flat, you can just add natural purified water. And then you want to add, I always like to use the wooden toothpick method when I'm using essential oils and I'm making elixirs, drinks, or putting it in my food, because we can never take out the essential oil, but we can always add a little bit more. And so the wooden toothpick, you know, if we just were to, you don't even have to pour the bottle over. I like to just keep the cap on and tip the bottle over, and then take the cover off, and then just stick the wooden toothpick right in the around the top there, and you'll get a lot of the oil there, and then you can just kind of stir it in. So you can add as much basil that you want to taste, and you can even add a drop or two, or depending on how strong you like it, more of lemon oil. And remember that there's different health and medicinal benefits from the lemon juice as compared to the lemon essential oil. They're not the same. So we're getting the benefit of getting vitamin C, which is something that we also need to keep ourselves healthy by drinking adding the lemon juice. And adding the lemon oil works as a detoxifier, so it helps our body to detox from detox the toxins from our system. Okay, so then we would add that, and if you want to put it over ice, you are welcome to put it over ice, of course. You can get creative with your ice cubes, and you could freeze a little sliver of lemon or basil in your ice trays and have these cute little ice cubes. So then you have the herb and the fruit in the drink, and little, you can eat that. Or you can not add ice, and if we're living according to Ayurveda, then in Ayurveda, no matter how hot it is outside, we don't drink anything with ice in it, because let's think about what ice does when it enters our system. It makes everything really cold and constricts, right? So it creates that tension in the body. It's taxing our system because our system has to heat up that liquid, because everything in our body is body temperature. It also solidifies the oils, any oils that are in your body. So if you've eaten anything with ghee, oil, any greasy food, fried foods, even if they're healthy oils, they're gonna, what happens when oil gets cold? Think of coconut oil. It congeals, it solidifies, and that is going to prevent or create stagnation in the digestive system. So you might want to rethink ice in your drinks. You can use cooling spices to cool you down, and basil is, what did we say earlier? It's a little bit of a warming spice, so you may not want to put the fresh basil herb in there, but just maybe go less on the oil. But you can always add a sprig of basil and a lemon wedge to the top of your drink, and it's a really beautiful drink to have in the summer. And if you live in a family that says things to you, they don't trust people who don't drink. And if you don't drink, you can make this as a really nice mocktail, and you could say, oh, I have vodka in there, or there's gin, and you can say, I'll make the cocktails, and you make the drinks, and everyone has their drinks, and then you can make your own mocktails so that you're not patronized by your family and friends. I just noticed that so much, and I just find that such a peculiar phenomena in Western culture about drinking. I think that people can be really uncomfortable because they're so used to drinking socially. And I think that people oftentimes make the assumption that if one doesn't drink, that you must be an alcoholic, or are you pregnant? What's going on? Are you okay? Why are you not drinking? I've had so much of that because I'm not a drinker, really. I mean, I'll enjoy a nice cocktail every once in a while. Not really a cocktail. I like a glass of wine or a mezcal or a single malt whiskey. Those are my kind of thing. If I'm going to drink. But I feel like I don't know. It's just such a funny, it's just a funny phenomenon. I don't know what to say about that. So anyway, There's one more recipe I want to give to you that I thought was really a cool thing, because when we're talking about being outside, gathering with our friends, hopefully soon, or even in small groups, and now that we're getting outside and we're moving into spring and then summer, there's a really cute recipe called insect repellent luminaries. And this is such a cute idea. So you can get a mason jar or any kind of jar. You can wash out any of the jars that you have from your food and upcycle. And you can take a jar, wash that out, fill it, or put some water in there, and put some slices of fresh lemon or some basil leaves. You can do this when you're making your drink. So if you're having a little garden party, you can do a little theme for your friends, which is cute. And you can get the little votive candles and put that on top of the water. So it will kind of float on the surface of the water. And then, excuse me, as you light it, you're going to let the wax melt a little bit so it liquefies, and then you can add a drop of lemon and maybe 4 drops of or add 4 drops of basil, 1 drop of lemon, or you can play with that. You can add equal parts, and it will act like a natural insect repellent too, and it will smell really good while you're outside. And it will look pretty too. So you've got all your bases covered. You've got your cocktails, you can set your mood, and you can also protect everyone's immune system.
I can't wait for garden parties and friends.
I know, me too. Me too. I love having little dinner parties, little garden parties. When I lived in Tulum with my friend Sophie, we had this really beautiful yard with all the tropical plants and flowers, and we would bring out all these cushions, and we bought like the white gauze netting and put that around like curtains, and we had little lanterns all around and candles, and it's so sweet when you can really eat outside with your friends, and especially in the evening time. It's such a sacred time of the day when we move from through that period of sunset at twilight, and the day turns to night. It's just a really special time to gather with our friends and family and really move into that transition from that, what we were talking about earlier, that activity during the day, and moving into that period of rest and relaxation, so that we're able to sleep well. We're relaxing our nervous system. And when we have these aromatic and plant remedies to assist us, and we're doing it in nature, we attune to the rhythms of nature, and we become so much more healthy in our immune system, and so much more vibrant beings, and more radiant from the inside out, because it's as we connect with nature, we naturally become more joyous, because we are in our literal elements. You know what I mean? So fun summer times, fun spring and summer nights ahead, right? All right, my friends, thanks so much for being here. I love these classes so much, and I love what you women contribute. And please share these videos. Let's get them out there, and let's just keep inviting more people to listen in and join us and experience these oils for themselves. So if anyone's listening and they haven't experienced basil oil for themselves, I'm sure that the person who shares this video with you is happy to send you a little oil sample of basil, and maybe if you're lucky, some lemon oil, so you can play around with some of these creations and come up with your own. And if you come up with your own, please share them, because we can all learn from each other. It's so much fun. So thank you so much. Wishing you all a beautiful Wednesday, Wellness Wednesday, and may you always experience optimal health, wellness, joy, and radiance. Namaste, sweet
Namaste.
friends.
Bye.
Have a beautiful day.
You too.
Bye.